Hello, everybody. Welcome to our third session today, part of the Wear Circular series. As you're joining, we've got a large number of people joining us. So as you're coming in, just as we always ask, please share in the chat where you're coming from today. We've had quite a global audience so far. So curious to see if we've got a lot of the same folks who've been with us the last two sessions. Don't be shy. You can say the city or the country. Just pop that into the chat as we let people file in. Hi, Amy in Brooklyn. Welcome. Okay. We got a shyer audience this afternoon. Toronto, Saskatoon. Okay. Hey, Sandra in Richmond Hill. London, Edmonton. It's a very Canadian or North American audience so far. Wonder what time it is in India and White Rock, Massachusetts, Montpelier, Texas, JCPenney, hello. Okay, so as we're just gonna let everybody file in here, I'm gonna just kind of get things going. So for those of you, I apologize if this is the third time you've been with us today and you've heard me say this repeatedly. But for those of you who don't know me, I am Kelly Drennan. I am the founder of Fashion Takes Action, which is Canada's only nonprofit organization devoted to advancing sustainability in the entire fashion system since 2007. And by fashion system, we mean that we work with industry and with consumers. Before we begin, I would like to share a land acknowledgement. I'm joining from Toronto, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Toronto is built on a sacred land that is part of an agreement between Indigenous peoples and allied nations to peacefully and respectfully care for it. And the reason I choose to share this acknowledgement is because it is evident that the colonial structures used to once settle this land are the very same systems that support the exploitation of resources and people in the global fashion industry today. Fashion Takes Action is working to help dismantle these colonial structures. By providing platforms like Wear, we aim to give a voice to the people who are being exploited, to showcase the importance of issues such as circularity, and to acknowledge the need to prioritize respect for the land and the people involved. This monthly webinar series is free, and as a nonprofit, that means we rely on sponsorship and donations. We are currently trying to raise $25,000 to digitize part of our successful youth education program, My Clothes, My World, and that ends at the end of this month. So as a thank you to us for bringing you this amazing content for free each month, we ask that you please consider making a donation today, even if it is just $5, because with over 1,000 people registered today, that adds up. And my colleague Nikki will be sharing that link to the crowdfunder in the chat function. Speaking of the chat function, please only use that to provide messages or comments, but the questions for the panel need to be added to the Q&A. We also have an upvote function on, so if before you actually pose your question, just scan through what's already there, see if it's similar, and if it is, just like it and it'll get bumped up to the top, which will make it much easier for our moderator. So this third and final session is a very exciting one. It's going to focus on circular innovative business models such as repair, rental, resale, and we're going to have a little bit better of understanding of the role of reverse logistics in accelerating circularity. A big thank you to this session sponsor, dbrand, who I have had the pleasure of knowing for many, many years. dbrand has recently shifted towards a reverse logistics company, and you're going to get to hear more about that. They've been working with apparel brands for many years to help divert their textile waste and provide solutions for that. So this is a natural evolution for them. And co-founder Amelia Leiter is going to host our speakers today. So welcome, Amelia.
Thank you, Kelly. Good morning, everybody. I'm here from Vancouver. Happy to be here. Thank you and welcome to our panelists. We'll be hearing from them all very shortly. So thank you so much. I'm really excited to be moderating this session. I think it's not only fun stuff to talk about, but it's also, I think, a very important conversation to have. Just to give you a little background for those who haven't had the opportunity to meet in person or virtually yet. Again, like Kelly said, my name is Amelia Leiter. I'm one of the co-founders of dbrand. Dbrand's been in the reverse logistics space for over 13 years now. Traditionally, we've worked to help find secure recycling solutions for many retail brands across North America for their non-saleable goods. More recently, we've launched a new software platform called the Allocation Engine, which looks to automatically sort goods using a digital ID into their highest and next best use, including resale, donation, repair, and all sorts of different recycling technologies, both chemical and mechanical. So I'm really excited to be involved in this conversation today. One thing I did want to just mention before we get started is, you know, I felt as though I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that today is kind of an important day for our partners down south, and also for us, and I think for the entire world. So I know that often in our day-to-day lives, it's easy to lose context and lose sight of why we make the decisions we do every day, and why these kind of conversations are also very important. So I think it is, in our case, as we're talking about apparel, on how to repair, on how to renew, and extend the value of these resources, what we're really doing is we're finding new ways to inspire new behaviors, to renew our values, and to think about our world's resources as being finite. And so these shifts in thinking have not just in thinking, but in action, have the potential to extend far beyond our industry. And so I think this is an important filter to consider as we engage in this conversation today, both the panelists, but also the audience, and engaging with your questions and comments. You know, I've obviously have a really strong desire for connectivity in this industry. And just to like kind of put things in perspective, I think I wanted to share a few stats that I came across recently, just to show the context of how large this industry is. You know, the global apparel industry is worth $1.34 billion, or $1 trillion, sorry. And that equates to 107 billion units produced annually. Currently, only 13% of those are recycled. So that means that 93 billion items are sent to landfill each year globally. I think we can do better, and I think we are doing better. And that's why we have these amazing groups here today. We have Nicole Bassett from the Renewal Workshop. We have Brianna Tubner from Banana Republic and Karen Campbell from Arc'teryx, who not only do they have important roles within their companies, but their companies are starting to show us how they are doing better and how they're working towards new, more sustainable models. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Nicole Bassett. Nicole, can you just maybe explain to us a little bit about the Renewal Workshop for those who may not be familiar, maybe your role, and then also your company's approach towards circularity?
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me, and I'm excited to be here. I'm one of the co-founders of the Renewal Workshop, and the Renewal Workshop started in 2015 now. And it came out of this idea that I had been working in sustainability for a brand, and sort of always had this thing in the back of my mind, like the more sustainable we were making our products when I was at Patagonia and at Prana, was like part of the path. But at the end of the day, we're in a business model that just relied on growth. And that sort of irked me. And sort of when you're talking about like getting values aligned, how do we start to get the business model to be more values aligned with sort of the reality of the world? So that was really sort of the impetus of starting the company. So the Renewal Workshop works with brands, and our whole business model is to basically help a brand take their post-consumer products, things that are considered waste, either returns to their distribution centers or collections from take-back programs. And we do all of the work to then get that product cleaned, repaired, renewed, back ready for sale again. So we build white label re-commerce marketplaces for a brand to use and sell, and handle basically all of the like operations and logistics for a brand, so that they can take their waste after it's done its first use and generate a new business model out of it. So we work with a few different companies in the US. Prana, The North Face, Koyuchi are some of our partners. Carhartt. And then we last year opened our second facility in Amsterdam, where we have Tommy Hilfiger is our big client over there. So I look forward to more questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole. That's great. Brianna, do you want to introduce yourself and some of the work that you guys are doing at Banana Republic in circularity?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Brianna and I currently lead strategy and operations for Banana Republic. Our brand, many people don't know this, but we were actually founded in the spirit of resale. In 1978, our founders traveled the globe finding surplus inventory to resell in our Mill Valley original headquarters. Obviously, we've expanded much more beyond that original mandate, but it stays true to our founder spirit and what we try and continue to do today. I spend a lot of my time in my role thinking about the macro environment, our customer, and what brands like Banana Republic can do to not only meet our customer needs, but also influence customer behavior in this space. We have been experimenting and playing. We think a lot in this space. We look at what we believe the closet of the future will be for our customers. Right now, in 2019, coming into 2020, resale rental made up about 8% of our customers, a macro customer, apparel customers' closet. We believe at Banana Republic that's going to grow to about 20% over the next 5 to 10 years. And that's a conversation that we have to be a part of. I don't think anyone knows for sure what the makeup of that will be yet, but what we're doing is taking a stand, taking a role, and experimenting in that place. We launched last year a partnership with a resale company, ThreadUp. As many of you know, they're stating 64 billion market opportunity in the resale space over the next 5 years. You can go onto our website, you can download a kit sent to your home, you can download a mailing label, pack up clothes that you have in your closet, send in and get credit for Banana Republic goods. We also launched a rental platform called Style Passport in the fall of 2019. You can go on, rent directly Banana Republic items. About 75% of our assortment is on there for $75 a month, and you can interchange those 3 items as much as you want. I'm excited to get into some of the details and things that we're seeing there in our business and customers. And then lastly, we did a partnership last spring with a company called Shop Thrilling that is digitizing vintage stores across the US. We launched with, they helped us go back and source some of that amazing surplus goods back from the 80s and 90s. And when we launched that partnership, we highlighted the heritage of our brand. We highlighted the lifestyle component of this resale and vintage as being part of the contemporary closet. And we ended up getting over 3 million PR impressions, which was a huge conversation for us as a brand. So we see this as part of the future, and not only something that we need to service and be there for our customers, but something that we can help drive and accelerate.
Thank you, Brianna. That's very interesting. I think, having you speak to it at such a, with such a company of such scale, I think is really important. I think there's definitely, there's a lot to be said that the market and the consumers and the brands are ready for this change and looking at ways to, like you mentioned, there's so many different ways to look at extending that value. So thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, we'll move over to Karen Campbell from Arc'teryx, who, I love how this panel has such a different viewpoints. Obviously, Banana Republic being quite a part of a large, part of Gap Inc., which is obviously a massive company, and then Arc'teryx being a growing and leading outdoor retailer. Karen, do you want to give us a little background on your role at Arc'teryx and just some overview of the company's approach towards circularity?
Sure, thanks so much for having me. I'm just down the road from you here in Vancouver, which is where Arc'teryx is headquartered. And we're a design brand that specializes in technical apparel and outerwear. You probably know us best for our ski gear and other outdoor adventure stuff. So we're directly in the business of enjoying nature, and it's definitely an imperative for us to reduce our impact as much as possible. My role is to run strategy and new business development, and I have a special focus on circular economy. And the thing is, we've always been about circularity in terms of our durability, craftsmanship, and innovation. We're named for a fossil that is the first reptile who developed wings for flight. So it's a symbol of a leap forward in evolution. And circularity is, the next step for us. We really believe that, and we'll be leaning into it more and more. The most visible pilot we have at the moment is our used gear program, where we take back from our customers clean and refurbished product and offer it for resale. And that's all facilitated through a partnership model. So we're pretty excited about circularity. There's a lot more to come. We have a lot on the go right now because circularity encompasses a lot.
Awesome. That's amazing. Yeah. And I think we'll find that like circularity has definitely become a buzzword, if you will. And I think it's a really awesome word because it just allows us to look at the full picture of products and systems and business models, et cetera. So I think it's really important to touch on the complexity of it. It's not a simple feat. There's very, very few things out there right now that are truly circular. So I like that we're being so aspirational, I think, in our quests here in each group. So yeah, just to kind of continue the conversation, Nicole, I'll go back to you. You have a lot of experience working in the apparel industry. You've worked, obviously, as you mentioned, for Patagonia from a brand perspective, and then also as a startup. And I don't know if our companies can be called startups anymore, but I think we are on the tipping point, I think, of what of where we both wanted to get to with our business. Is there a point where there really is that appetite and that desire, both from the brands and the customers, to get there. But can you just talk a little bit? I know you guys recently launched your leading circularity report, and I know some people may not have had a chance to review it yet. Could you just share some of your the juicy sort of insights that you guys gathered in discovering this research that you think would be most interesting? Like, I think you gave me, a little tip of some of the stuff was the % of products that could be renewed and resold, and what customers' sort of intakes or takes are on this. Could you just talk a little bit about what you think this group might be interested in terms of your findings there? That'd be amazing. Thank you.
We were about to release this report in March of last year, and then went, oh yeah, no one's interested in reading a report about the apparel industry right now. And then we were like, okay, well, we'll release it in June, just as Black Lives Matter protests took over the news and the cases of COVID went up. And again, we were like, okay, we're not going to release this yet. But in the intro to the report, we talk all about this being in a world in crisis and multiple crises happening, and how interwoven these crises are. And then it really highlighted the need that we do need to accelerate our industry forward out of these bad habits and get that into a different type of business model. And so our whole hope was that the data in this report would help kind of de-risk some things for CEOs who are interested in circularity but not really ready to go there. That's why the report is filled with a number of case studies, or sort of pathways that brands are taking to already do take back programs, to already do re-commerce, to already do rental, and then share some of the data that we've been learning over the last 4 years. So we, part of our business development process is brands will send us stuff, and we do an assessment of do you have feedstock for a re-commerce business model? And so after doing 50 of them and thousands of units, we realized all of this its path was either donation overseas or landfill or incineration. And actually 82% of it, if you cleaned and repaired and renewed it, could get resold again. So we're all sitting on a supply chain right here in our back door, which I think was very interesting to companies who are looking at like the sort of vulnerability of a global supply chain. And so here's some product that we have right now. The other one that we sort of knew, but it was helpful to get some data around, is that really only 26% of the products we have recycling options available to them with existing recycling technologies. So we're actually designing product for landfill. We're not even designing it for circular. So that was a really helpful feedback loop that led to some work we did with the North Face's design team, and they did a design residency to help really understand, like, what are we designing? And then the other thing we tried to get a sense of is, like, where are consumers today? And so we did a survey research study and found that like a significant, like 84% of consumers understand that the apparel industry has an impact on climate change, and they want to start acting and behaving differently. And this idea of renewed or not new product sales is very comfortable to them, and people are gravitating towards it. So we're seeing some data that's showing that trend there. Yeah, so those are a few of the highlights. Happy to answer their questions in the question and answer time.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'll go to Brianna for the next question here. So, you know, I think that some, you know, if you look at, like, you talked a lot about the macro economy, and I think what I was wondering, and I'm sure a lot of the audience would be interested in as well, is when you think of the word luxury or affordable luxury, the words used in sort of like B grade or, you know, discounted, those words don't necessarily go together traditionally. So can you really share with us a little bit about, you know, Banana's approach to how to promote circularity in this to a customer base that maybe traditionally hadn't been as important? So can you maybe speak to a little bit about your experience and sort of, you know, Banana Republic's approach to engaging the consumer in this circular movement?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a great question. And like I said, you know, being the size that we are and the brand that we are, and then being part of the broader Gap Inc. family, you know, we continue, and me personally continue to take steps to help us move in the right direction. We see and recognize with a lot of the partnerships that I talked about, it's truly an ecosystem. And even the panelists on this call represent that. And the challenges are so big that we all will need to work together to solve them. I think specifically for us, for Banana Republic, to your question, we see a great role that we can play in redefining what luxury means. When I think a lot of us, when we think of the past, even 5, 10, 15 years ago, this idea of luxury, it was very exclusive, you know, perhaps not as mindful about how we use our natural resources. I think the way that we talk about it as a brand right now, and, you know, with my colleagues, with our customers, the discussion is much more around luxury being, you know, time, peace of mind, knowing where your clothes come from, knowing that you have options to reduce the footprint of your own closet, and we can provide those for you. So that's all part of it. I think what's exciting for me is specifically about some of the things that we're doing to redefine that notion of luxury. I mean, first and foremost, we're talking about circularity here, right? That starts with the creation of the product. I won't go into too much detail, but happy to answer more questions. Banana Republic has publicly stated 4 sustainability goals in terms of the actual our core line and the clothes that we make. Those are all available on our website. We have ambitious goals against 2023, which is just in 2 years, and then goals against 2025. You can see we track and we report publicly our progress on those goals. They're about, you know, achieving 100% sustainable cotton, 50% sustainable fibers, more sustainable denim, and reducing water and promoting our clear chemistry. So again, you can go on our website and see how we're tracking to those goals, and we welcome that conversation. In terms of redefining luxury, it's about talking to our customers about that and saying it's important. I think we feel like the rental platform, it democratizes access to that luxury. So perhaps you wouldn't be able to afford a sustainable sweater and jeans, 2 or 3 times a month, but if you use the rental program, you can have access to that high quality, sustainably made product that perhaps you wouldn't have before. From a macro standpoint, we're seeing really exciting things too, and I've talked to a lot of my colleagues in the luxury space on this. We saw the partnership with Christian Siriano and ThredUp, Olivia Wilde and ThredUp. So this idea of showing that it's luxurious to have a closet that has multiple sources and diversifying and is supportive of the circular economy, I think is a responsibility as brands that promote a lifestyle of the future.
Great, thank you, Brianna.
Yeah,
it's interesting. Some of the stats that I shared earlier, I was also reading about consumption patterns around the world, and of that large number that I gave you, I think China made up 40 trillion of it, or whatever it was. There's a large number, but what they showed was that in the US, and I imagine Canada would be similar, that the rate at which Americans buy clothing is about 1 middle price item per week, every week of the year. So I think it was 53 items, whereas in China it's a quarter of that. So it's interesting in the role that some of these brands can have, and like you talked about, like the rental aspect, and buying more luxurious goods that will last longer, and repair, like Nicole's mentioning. And so I think it's really interesting to look at the impact some of these programs will have on consumption, and just the way in which we're framing the opportunities to the consumers. So thank you for that. Karen, I'll move over to you. This is actually a great segue, because the position of Arc'teryx is obviously quite different than that of Banana Republic, being an outdoor brand. And you spoke really really well about their position in the industry, in terms of you are nature lovers, and then that's really who your customers are specifically. So do you think that there's more or less pressure on Arc'teryx as a brand to approach this circularity, and how do you see your role as an outdoor brand in terms of that? Is that something that you can speak to a little bit, and feel free to add more or less to that answer, but be curious to see, just as coming from the outdoor industry, how those pressures might come from consumers differently.
Sure. I mean, the pressure to be more sustainable in general, I think, is a general trend, especially amongst younger people. But there's probably a subset, or certainly a subset, of people who participate in outdoor environments and obviously want to see that, especially from their outdoor providers. We really think the most important and most baseline thing we can do is make things that last, and then keep those things that last in circulation as long as possible. Of course, we want to make these with the most sustainable materials available. So that's what we're really trying to do, is we're trying to keep things that we've made, that we stand behind, that has value, and make sure that that value, if it's sitting in someone's closet, has a really easy way to get out of that closet and into the hands of someone else who really wants it. And we want to do that through our own platforms, because we know there's a technical aspect to our garments that we know best. And we opted for a white label platform rather than a peer-to-peer or managed marketplace play for that reason specifically. And we are unique in that we uphold our warranty or guarantee around limited lifetime of manufacturing in our used gear platform, as well as our new platform. So we're doing what we can to support our consumers and get the most use out of what we are producing. I'd say, and this is a little tangential to the question, but the biggest learning we have had so far is, like, we're pretty good at marketing to create demand. We've been in that business for 30 years. But the unique aspect of, this sort of reverse logistics, or engaging directly with our customers and getting that stuff back, is in marketing to create supply. And that's been a huge learning, and something that we are going to be leaning into more and more.
Interesting. To push you a little bit on that, how does the rental market, is that something that, like, as I know that your gear is very technical and so repair probably is challenging as well, but could you speak a little bit, and maybe I'm pushing you in an area I shouldn't hear, but I'm just curious in terms of both the functionality of your goods and if you've had challenges in repair, and if rental would ever be something that you guys, and feel free to say no if you're not willing to discuss it, but at something that the brand might look at.
Rental has been super interesting to me for a couple of years. You know, there's definitely subscription rental models at play, and that doesn't really fit for us. We're like kind of more the one-time ski weekend for someone who's a more aspirational outdoor enthusiast. We're not totally sold that we can, you know, rent a new item in your outdoor closet every month or 3 months or whatever it is. So rental is definitely of interest. We've piloted a free gear library at our retail stores for the last couple seasons, where people can come in and use that gear for free. We'd like to scale that, and we believe there's a lot of technology options that are making that more available. In terms of repair, we have an amazing repairs team here in Vancouver, actually, and we do a like new refurbishment for our warranty program. So, you know, that capability is definitely there, and if that will extend the lifetime of a rentals program garment, then we'll have that ready to go when we're ready to press go on rentals in general at scale.
Great, thank you so much. That's really interesting. I love that. Thank you. So Nicole, back to you. You know, given your experience, and this is a good segue from Karen as well, in the repair space and the renewal space, obviously, what do you think the biggest challenges are that are maybe preventing other brands from moving in this direction? Can you speak a little bit to some of the barriers that might exist? I imagine that that this might be something to look at in terms of like how do we get more groups moving in that direction?
Yeah, there's a lot of barriers, but there's also a lot of great examples, like Arc'teryx, like Banana Republic right here, to say like, don't get too caught up in the barriers. I think people do. One of the early thing I think was for a lot of brands is like, we are in the we make things business. We're in the new stuff business. And so for a lot of CEOs to say, oh, I'm willing to invest in changing my business model without there being a lot of proof in market, especially when we started back in 2015, it's like, no one's doing this barely. So why would we get into it? I think the nice thing is, and one of the reasons we put out a report, and every time a new brand comes into the space, is just showing that this is the movement forward. And I think the fact that circular economy is a little more digestible, because you're like, oh, it's sort of, we're thinking about how to make money in this process. I think another challenge that a lot of brands are running into is the fact that we're trying to take a linear economy and make it circular. And we never designed the product or the business or the systems to be circular in the first place. So everyone's just like, why is it so expensive? Or why is this so hard? And you're like, well, because it was never designed to be anything but hard. So, and that was one of the reasons we started the Renewal Workshop. We're like, we will take off your plate the things that are really hard. So you only have to worry about some things, and then we'll sort of spoon feed you the stuff that you need next to get the business. Because in 5 years from now, the way you will do your financial planning, the way you will design your company, the way you'll do everything will be dramatically different, because it will have been done through a circular lens. And so I do think a lot of the challenges is that a lot of brands come to the table and say, oh, well, it has to have the same margin structure, or it has to have the same finance model, or it has to have all of these things that they know how to do, which is how we do it in linear. And we have to sort of break down that perception and way of seeing and saying that is not actually true inside of circular, because we're actually going to, you have a sunk cost, and here we are putting like we have to, what had zero value, we're putting some value. This is what the margin is, but hey, you could sell it twice, or you could rent it more. Like building that sort of skill set and knowledge is something that is happening. But I definitely feel like that's been The bigger challenges for me have been more mindset than actual. And maybe that's because we're an operator, and so that's the world I know well. But I would just encourage companies who are here that that you can get there. And I think we have two perfect examples right here on the panel that are doing it really successfully.
Great, thank you, Nicole. Yeah, it's interesting, you know, having spent, you know, a decade working in the apparel recycling side of things, one of the big things that we recognized was that disconnect that sort of was existing between sort of the apparel manufacturers and retailers and then the apparel recyclers. And, you know, a lot of the recycling, you know, technologies and systems that were in place, they're, you know, they were working in isolation from what was actually happening in terms of new materials and designs and items that would be irritants that would prevent the actual end of life of that material to be used as an input, because it just wasn't created in the space or with the idea that it is actually going to be recycled. Whereas now the circular approach allows us to start having those conversations. And so even in my journey through this industry, I recognize that as well. So so thank you. I'm glad you share the same sentiment. And I think even this conversation is a great one to help move us forward. Speaking of moving forward, we have about 10 minutes. I do want to ask each of you one more question, which personally I'm interested to hear what your response is. And then we're going to move over to the Q&A from the attendees. So my last question for each of you is around technology and innovation. And you can use the hat within which you're in the filter of your conversation today, or you can just look at it from like a personal standpoint, things that you're interested in or most excited about in terms of, you know, technology, whether it's, you know, the power of AI to help power design and prototyping to, you know, new recycling technologies that are going to allow us to use more circular materials. I'd love to hear what each of you thinks in terms of what's coming for the future, and it can be totally out in left field and not actually even commercialized or tangible yet, but I just love to hear your insights on that. Brianna, do you want to start with that one?
Sure, it's such an exciting question. And I do just want to segue or piggyback off what Nicole was saying around what a systems challenge this is and how profound it is. I mean, Nicole, that has been my experience as well. This has been about mindset change, not only within companies, within the broader ecosystems, but with consumers. And so, Amelia, when you ask about technology, I'm gonna do, you know, two answers here. On one hand, I think what's happening, it's not new technology, but it's the new adoption of technology, and it's simply e-com. You know, 10 years prior to coming into the pandemic, only about 6-7% of people were buying goods online, right? We come into the pandemic, we got almost not quite double, 10% of growth through the pandemic to 16%. We think this year we're going to get up to 27%, another 10%. So the amount of consumers, and I hope that shocks some of you, because when I first read that, all of us, you know, perhaps have been shopping online for quite a while. We get such a pulse of, you know, North America doing business in the US and Canada, that we see, you know, from a macro standpoint, and then within Banana Republic, that shopping online, particularly apparel, is quite a new thing for the majority of people. What's exciting about that, and why I'm picking it as my answer, is because that's the enabler of all of these, you know, new business models that we've been talking about today, and certainly the three that I've featured that Banana Republic is playing. And it's an experiment to see and try with consumers. A lot of times, you know, we're the first brand that's introducing the concept of ThreadUp, right? And this idea that you can order a bag and send your. We hear from a lot of customers, it's the first time ever hearing about it. Similarly with rental, it's their first time hearing about it. So I think the growth and adoption of e-com over the last year, and the acceleration of that, I think is only going to accelerate a lot of the excitement around the circular economy and business models. The last quick thing I'll say is, and I'm sure my co-panelists will get to this, but material science is so exciting right now in terms of what's going on there. It's reflected in our sustainability goals. There's just some amazing companies out there. One that I love, Mango Materials, they are using bio waste to extract carbon to make PLA or plastic polyester-like materials. It's just, I mean, talk about circularity. It's endless. So those are the two areas that I'm most energized and excited by in terms of supporting the circular economy.
Great, thanks, Brianna. Yeah, it was interesting. Like, you know, love your point around e-commerce, because that is something that I think a lot of us have probably been doing for years, but you know, there are challenges to it. And I think, you know, the whole bracketing, you know, when people order multiple sizes, it puts a huge strain on reverse logistics. And that's obviously the space that I work in. But I think that there are a lot of opportunities using technology, such as like digital wardrobes, or, you know, like dressing rooms, where they can start to use AI to kind of replicate what we look like and what different products would look like on us. So I think like you said, there's an endless amount of opportunity there to really start to plug into that. Karen, do you want to give us your answer in terms of technology?
Sure. I guess as the little brand on the panel, technology is what's allowing us scale and reach. You know, we don't have as huge of a customer base, but we're able to reach those customers wherever they are. And we need those technology partners. You know, we talked about circularity being effectively retrofitting an entire way of doing business from the linear economy. We're not going to do that ourselves as a smaller brand internally with the logistics and technology to do those things. So it's really a network economy, a network of partners, suppliers, technology providers that's going to enable that transition, and ultimately the consumer participation as well. So what I'm super excited about next, though, is for us upcycling. And I don't necessarily mean, you know, excess raw material or dead stock, like true end of life materials that can be repurposed to a new thing. And how do we do that at scale and with the same level of craftsmanship and durability that we stand behind as a brand? So I'm pretty excited about it.
Great, thank you. One of the things that we're excited about within your industry that we're working on is some down apparel recycling, and I know we've been talking to Arc'teryx and other brands about that, but that's a good example of a industry problem and an industry opportunity where we could, you know, one brand could try to solve it, but why not use the whole industry to try to find a better way of using this resource to its full extent. And it's been wasted for so many years. So now there's an opportunity to start to look at ways to solve for that at an industry level. So that's a great point. Nicole, over to you, and then we'll bring the questions to the audience here.
So I think the thing that is most interesting to me, or the challenge that we feel like we need to figure out how to solve for, is a product was never designed to get passed on to get sold again, and it doesn't carry forward its information on it. So all we have is it's a care content label, and hopefully someone didn't cut that out, or the size is hopefully on the product. And that's not good enough for circular economy. So I'm very excited about digital ID of product. We've been working with Eon, with Connect Fashion for a number of years, trying to talk about what is the data that needs to get collected? How does it get passed through? What kind of database does it live in? How do technologies actually work with, like, how do you take the info into a business like ours, do operations, add data to it, and then move it on to its next life? And I think what's so exciting is it's not that far away. Like we can do it. And so, but like we've all been saying here, the network, when it gets to scale, because you have to add these IDs at the first production level, and then it has to be tracked throughout the system. So if we want to see these things accelerate, I really encourage as many people to like move out of that, like, oh, maybe one day, into like, let's just test it on some level and some scale. So that's my big exciting one.
Awesome. I couldn't agree with you more. I love the concept of digital ID, and all the, obviously with our business and within our solution network as well. I think it's really going to change change the way that we all do business and interact with consumers. So thank you, ladies. We've opened it up to the audience. We have a bunch of great questions here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of go from the top here, and we might, I don't know if one of you wants to answer a question, if you're just dying to answer it, let me know, just raise your hand maybe, and otherwise I'll just choose one of you, I guess. So the first one, which was quite popular, talks about consumer behavior. And obviously consumers play a pretty important role in the circular economy. And so the question is, how can we engage with consumers to motivate them to take responsible actions to divert textiles from trash cans? Anybody? Brianna? All right, over to you.
I'll jump in. I mean, it's a great question. I think Nicole and I and Amelia and Karen have talked about this a little bit, about the mindset shift needed. I'll share a personal story. About 5-6 years ago, I went on a work trip to New York, which I've done multiple times. And but this trip was different because about 3 months prior, 3-4 months prior, I had started a Rent the Runway rental program myself. And I'd been using it and was really excited and engaged and just interested in it. And I traveled to New York, and what normally I would do is do some personal shopping during that time and buy certain things. And I ended up coming back with an empty suitcase that trip, because I would walk into each store and I would say, I'm not going to spend that much on a sweater when I can go rent that next month. And so this was about 5 or 6 years ago. And my mind shift just completely changed in terms of how I approach my closet, my finances, my wardrobe, and then of course the impact on our environment. And my point is that I think oftentimes individuals and people need to experience something for themselves to have that mindset shift. We can't always tell people what they need to do. They need to experience it and experience how it's better. So that's one of the things, again, with the platform of Banana Republic and the fact that we do reach so many people, and that often, we're not perfect. We're continuing the conversation and trying to do better. But where we have a role to play, I think, is often we're the first time introducing some of these behavioral changes with consumers. And if they're like me, if it's a common human experience, that's something you have to have experience with before you shift your mindset, then we're headed in the right direction. So my short answer is as much exposure to people actually experiencing what it feels like economically and from making a difference, the quicker we'll change minds.
Great, thanks, Brianna. Great answer. I love the personal insight. I think that's really important because we're all consumers after all as well, right? So I think it's important to but it recognize,
was a lot of money,
right? Yeah, right. It's interesting. So one of the questions here, which I think is sort of a good segue from that question, is around, this is, to the brand. So maybe both Brianna and Karen could answer this one. How do you make renewal, take back, repair programs feasible? There seems like the labor and logistic costs would be high. This is what the person asked the question, and a couple other people and like this question as well. So how do you take that into account? Or is it done on an economic loss because it's the responsible thing to do? So I don't know how comfortable each of you are speaking to that, but if you could, I do know a little bit about this because we work in this industry a little bit, and it is definitely, the consumer definitely is involved in that decision as well. And how do you maybe incentivize the consumer? So maybe look at it from that perspective. But what does it mean to the brands, and how do you make it economically feasible if possible? So I don't know, Karen, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I do. That is definitely a concern. Like the first thing that happens when you say, hey, we want to do a used gear program or a take back program is like, is that going to cannibalize our full price sales? Are we going to make money? Is this worth the investment? I'd say for us, like if we had tried to build this in-house, we would not be live and it would not be happening and it wouldn't have ever gotten off the ground. So we had to use a partner first off, who specialized in the technology and the logistics of take back. I'm comfortable sharing like the program itself was profitable in the first year of operations. which was a huge win. And it just goes to show how much value there is in these underappreciated items. And, you know, in terms of incentivizing customers, we did experiment with that a bit as well. So in November, we ran a used gear month, where for a month, instead of offering 20% of your original retail value of a product, we offered 30%. And it was such a good experiment, and we're still learning from it in terms of, was it the incentive, the additional incentive for your product, or was it just that we talked about it in a new way? And I think we'll continue to run those experiments to encourage that customer behavior and adoption, because the scale and impact and ultimately the profitability of our program is really going to come from our customer participation rather than us generating a whole bunch of supply. We can't build it. So we do need them to participate. So you know, if for anyone looking into this, like, I wouldn't approach it as a loss leader myself. I think there's opportunity to be a responsible business and still make money.
Yeah, and I'll just underscore the partnership comment that Karen made. I think you've heard me talk a lot about our partners today. With our Style Passport rental offering, it's powered by Castle, as I mentioned. And I think what underscores the ecosystem of this journey is that it's this experimenting mindset. So, you know, at Banana Republic, we have a large consumer base. We can work with partners to accelerate some of these new business models and test and see and learn and see what the consumer mindset is. And then secondly, it becomes a conversation and a commitment. I think to Karen's point, you have to adjust the metrics to a degree. You have to have a profound understanding of the system in terms of how we measure things currently versus how they might need to be measured in the future. And what I mean by that specifically is, you know, we measure the new customers that rental brings in. We're seeing more new customers being brought to the brand because of our rental offering than prior. We're also measuring loyalty, right? We have a much higher loyalty in our rental program than we do in our brand. And so how do we do a multi-channel? By that I mean, you know, customers being introduced by our brand and product via rental, and then perhaps coming on and investing in more higher quality pieces that they want to keep for a longer period of time. So getting creative about what success is in the beginning while you're promoting that adoption until the full adoption comes at scale, and you see the economics catch up.
Great, thanks, Brianna. So there's a couple questions here. Let me just look through here. So Nicole, there's a question specifically for you. At the Renewal Workshop, would you help brands or companies find collaboration partners to recycle clothes through remake programs? I'm not exactly sure what they're asking there, but I think it's maybe if you explain a little bit more about how the business model works, and if you work with partners, maybe that would help it. And, or Kelly, if I'm misunderstanding it and you want to jump in, please feel free to do that. I just think that's an interesting question in terms of how your company actually works with partners to help other brands do this.
Yeah, so we do have a network of partners that we're set up with as part of our business model and as part of our product flow. So we only work with brands who are our partners. So for example, Koyuchi is a home goods company that was one of our partners, and we get their stuff back from their returns as well as their subscription and customer like take back program. Comes to us, we decide that's renewable, it gets renewed, and then it's for sale on their renewed site. And then there's stuff that just, we're not reselling that. It is at the end of its life, but because they're a company that's home goods, it's mostly 100% organic cotton. So it actually is pretty fortunate that they, maybe not necessarily by design, but have transferred their company to be quite circular by the nature of their product So we actually went out to a few different cotton recyclers and had built a relationship with them to say, if we show up with enough inventory and a brand who wants to buy the output material of the recycling, can we have a conversation? And so we did a program with Recover. And so Koyuchi actually created a blanket that's for sale now with their old product. And so that's a relationship where we built a partnership and have now a supply chain that we've created that can go there. Another example, when we talk about like sort of upcycling or remaking things, the North Face's design team came and did their design residency with us. And one of the things they identified was like, you know, if yes, you can't fix the box cutter that went right here on the jacket because I'm going to see the repair, but this is an opportunity for us to do a line of product that is a very unique redesign. So we in-house do a remade program for them as part of our relationship, but that works because it's paired with Renewal and also other pieces of the business. So it's the combination of all of it that that we do when we're able to find the right partners for things. So hopefully that helped answer.
Great, thank you. So I think we probably have time for one more question here, just cognizant that it's 5 to the hour here. Maybe this would be interesting just to get a quick, 1 or 2 sentence answer from each of you on this. And what this is about consumption. So with this I'm just ending it with a bang here, but when we look at consumption, prior to our new approach towards circularity, it's been about the more we can consume, the better in terms of the capitalistic society that we live in. And I think the world is recognizing, as I mentioned at the beginning, our resources are finite. The clothing that we make is made out of our resources, and therefore something needs to change. So how are brands and companies that are so used to selling more going to shift and be able to look at ways to encourage less consumption? In a couple words or a couple sentences. I know that's a tough one. Brianna, let's go to you quick first, just quick as possible. What do you think?
Sure. I mean, look, it's a complex problem, obviously, and I think Nicole said it best about this being a systematic challenge and rooted in consumer mindsets as well. But what I'm seeing is a reinvestment back into quality in product. Promotion and a conversation now that I think consumers better understand what drives quality in product. I think consumers have a better understanding of what drives long-lasting product. And so I think you'll continue to see a shift and a move toward that, which will reduce costs per wear for the consumer, will reduce expand the longevity of product. And so, for example, we just launched a new line yesterday called BR Standard. It's really purpose-driven around end use. It's quality material, sustainably made. It's for everyday life and multi-purpose. And so I think you're going to see more collaborations and collections like that will ultimately reduce consumption.
Awesome, thank you. Karen, any thoughts on that quickly?
If we can provide ways for people to buy less, buy better, that's really what we're talking about here today. Buying better could look like a rental, it could look like a used gear, and the opportunity for brands is expanding. So previously, if you wanted to get people into a price point that they couldn't afford for a higher quality good, it was a discount. That was your option. And now there's more options. So it's just about shifting from buy to buy better. Yeah.
Great, love that. Thank you. Nicole?
And I just think like the circular economy's ethos is how do you decouple resources from revenue growth? And I think that giving that pathway to brands to say, hey, you don't have to just keep making more stuff to grow your businesses, and brands really embodying that. So the less we buy, because we're buying differently, is going to send a signal that the companies have to change how we generate revenue.
Well said. Amazing. Thank you, ladies. Anything, Kelly, anything you'd like to add at the end there with a couple minutes to go?
Yeah, no, just to say thank you. What a really great session. I know, like all of our sessions, we could keep talking about this for a long time. So I'm just going to let anybody know who had a question who we didn't have time to answer. If you want to, you could shoot me an email. First of all, I'm going to just share the link again to our crowdfunder. We'd love any support you can give us for our school program. Again, it's for kids that are aged 8 to 17, so it's really unique in the world. By digitizing this, we can go global. So no matter where you live, we can have youth in your communities learning about the impacts of fashion and feeling empowered to take action. In terms of my thanks page, already donated, awesome. My email address, I'm gonna just type in here. Feel free to shoot me an email if there was a question for any of our panelists today or for our sponsor, dbrand. Thank you so much again. Then feel free. I did put a link to dbrand's website in the chat, as well as the report Nicole mentioned, and also to Castle, which is what Banana Republic is working with there. So, so yeah, just thanks again to everybody for being here. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. And save the date, February 24th is going to be our next Wear series. Our focus will be on equity, inclusion, and diversity in fashion, a very important topic. So we look forward to bringing you expert speakers for a few really engaging sessions next month. All right, so thanks, Brianna, Karen, Amelia, Nicole. It's been a real pleasure. And best to all of you in your efforts to advance circularity, really important work you're all doing. So thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, Kelly.